Today on the roundtable, as always, we bring you the best or the most trending or the biggest stories, news stories that would be making the round in the country today. Today, interestingly, we are adding just one extra to the three big stories we normally would treat. My name is Melanie Ishola, and I am joined very well today by Mr. Obafemi Obadare to my right, and Mr. Chukwudi Akasike to my left. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Very well, let's move straight into the stories of today. Now, first we have Delta Bloodbath. Senate meets service chiefs as troops comb creeks. FG names 15 terrorism financiers. Resignation plans sanctions. And our third story is arrest and resignation. NLC Labour Party clash. And the very fourth one, let's say this is a bit dear to the hearts of a lot of people that I know and I think you care about. Jail for student loan defaulters as National Assembly passes bill. So, if you're ready, let's begin with the roundtable. Now, our very first story today speaks to the Delta Bloodbath as Senate meets service chiefs and troops comb creeks. There's been so much talk, as everybody now knows, about the gruesome killing of commanding officers of the 181 Battalion, 2 Army majors and 15 soldiers. Now, the nation was thrown into such a terrible state of mourning for our gallant soldiers on Thursday, 14th March 2024. The Senate Joint Committee on Defense, Army, Navy and Air Force on Wednesday held a closed-door meeting with the service chiefs over the recent killings of 17 officers and troops of the Nigerian Army in Okoma community, Bamadi local government area of Delta State. It was also gathered that troops on Wednesday intensified the manhunt for the killers of the military men. However, the 4 military officers and the 13 soldiers were said to have gone to Okoma community on a peacekeeping mission when they were slain by hoodlums last week, Thursday. You would also recall that the neighboring communities have been engaged in a communal land dispute since the 27th of January 2024, when some youths of Okoma were said to have ambushed and killed 3 Okoma youths, Igbo, Meshak, God's Power, Awusa, and Okemute Agbabuleke, over an 8-long land dispute in the areas as they were returning from Okwagbe. So, in an interesting turn also in the course of this week, the Senate President Godswill Akpabio had said that those involved in the killing of soldiers in Delta State may as well be foreigners. This has been visited with a lot of backlashes from Nigerians. So much to talk about, so many angles to look at this from, gentlemen. But very quickly, I'd like to look into what seemed for me to be the biggest part of this conversation, which is actually our gallant soldiers who are lost. A lot of people have come out to say that why send that caliber of military personnel for such kind of a peacekeeping mission. So from what you know in the past when we've had such peacekeeping missions and whatnot in Nigeria, do you fault the caliber of the military personnel sent, or do you think indeed they did what they probably normally would have done? And I start with you, Mr. Akasike.
I think that sending senior officers there would have, solved the problem.
It was really the right move?
It was the right move, I believe, because there is this thinking. An average Nigerian believes that if he sees a soldier, he will have a rethink and listen. But if he sees a policeman, he will not change, he will not budge. So I think it's the right move for them to have sent soldiers there.
And the caliber of soldier, Mr. Obadare, some have argued that could we not have used soldiers who equally are well-trained and capable, but not losing such might within the military force at this time?
You know, Nigeria is a country where the bigger you are, so to say, the more respected, the more respect that people accord you. So I want to believe that the military thought with the caliber of officers that the community will actually accord them more respect. That's the reason I believe they sent a commanding officer and 2 majors and a captain. Because even in our normal relations with the military, you find out that the officers are more cerebral, they are calmer, they seem to be more sensible than the troops. You know, when you engage the troops, they appear to be rash, and you know, but when you meet the officers, you are likely to get a good response and good communication.
Absolutely. Now, this is an interesting, angle into this. So I was almost going to say we seem to have a nation of the might is always right, if you would look at it. Now, for a clash that has gone on in the community, in the different communities of Bogadi since the 27th of January until now, it begs the question also, beyond the usual joint task force, maybe the police meddling and whatnot, what really are the other things that have been done, seeing as these communities are prone to these sort of clashes? Before now, there have been such clashes. It's not the first time. In fact, one could even say it won't be the last time. What are the lessons we can take from this in better handling these conflict situations? Mr. Kasike, I want to come to you.
I believe that if the National Orientation Agency were to be doing its job, this kind of situation wouldn't have come up in the first place. I noticed that the NOA has been sleeping. Because ordinarily, the monarchs, the traditional rulers in that area ought to have been able to handle the situation so that it won't have got out of hand to the extent of taking the lives of our precious soldiers. So I believe that government, the traditional rulers rather, have not been doing enough. The NOA, listen to TV, listen to radio any day, you will not hear them talking. But yet, federal government allocates, what will I call it? Funds
to the National Orientation Agency area. And I ask myself, since my childhood, I guess, I've not heard any major, we used to have this public service announcement from the National Orientation Agency and whatnot. And indeed, it's a big discourse because also in this conversation is the subject, for example, of patriotism, where people say, so these are our soldiers, we have trained and deposited so much into them, and they are wasted just like that over issues of land dispute. What better would you expect Nigerians to do to give to the nation when they serve and it seems they are wasted in such manner? But I do not want to belabor this point. I want us to quickly move into the searches that are ongoing. These searches have begun for a few days now, and nothing has been produced from the searches. The much we have, Punch reported that a little over 3 people have been arrested in connection to the killings of our soldiers and what's not in Bogadi. But indeed, if you would look at, is it Bomadi?
Bomadi.
I think I'm getting it wrong. Bomadi. Yeah, thank you. So if you look at this very critically, do you think that this is a situation where Akpabio, in some sense, bringing in the whole issue of these are externals to the natives of Bomadi that carried out this shooting? Do you think this is the situation here as to why they're not able to practically, maybe the traditional leaders handing over those who literally carried out the killing, or literally the combing of the creeks, generating results, as it were?
I don't think we should dwell so much on Akpabio. He's fond of making gaffes since he became a Senate president. He will just say things that are totally irrelevant. So I don't want us to concentrate on Akpabio as such. Look, he's Nigeria's number 3 man, but at the same time, while mercenaries around before he made that statement, we have the Niger Delta has always been a volatile place, and it's the locals who perpetrate whatever has been done there. It's not as if they are bringing mercenaries. All the arms during Yaradua, when he was president, he was the one who started the amnesty program with his deputy, then Goodluck Jonathan. So I don't think we should dwell so much on Akpabio. Rather, I want us to see how insecurity has really expanded in Nigeria over time. In communal clashes alone, over 696 Nigerians have died in communal clashes. We are not paying attention to basic insecurity in Nigeria. That's why what happened in Okwama on Thursday happened, because Nigerians, we leave things to fester before we take action. By that time, you won't be able to control it again. So you can see Islamic terrorism. It started in a little way in Borno State. Now it's expanded. Banditry started. You were not able to control it. The same thing with these communal clashes. There are many places. 3 years ago, I think 2021, in March 2021, there was a communal clash somewhere in Benue State. That's right. And 12 troops were also killed the same way. So when something happens and you don't take corrective actions immediately, you leave it to that it will take care of itself. That's what you see. It's a pity. What happened in Okwama might happen again in Nigeria. It might happen again in Nigeria.
Before you continue, let me also add that.
Yes, please.
We always cut this situation from the top. We don't look at the bottom. If you go to the primary schools, secondary schools today, there is nothing like moral instruction. So a child grows up believing that might is right, believing that using the guns is the best way to go. So the moral instruction is dead, the NOA is dead, the parental care is almost gone, because the parent is always outside there hustling for what the children will eat, not minding what the child has turned to. So that is the problem.
Now, thank you so much. Go on really with this topic, because it's at this point is something we are still literally looking at, how to solve the entire mystery around who did the killing and getting the right arrest. I do know that according to our report at the Punch, we reliably gathered that the prime suspect was a notable ally of key officials of the Bayelsa state government. While we all wait for more information around this, I move very quickly to our next story today. Now, the federal government names 15 terrorism financiers, bureau de change, plans sanctions. The clamor and requests by media and the public on the need for the full implementation of terrorism financiers may have come to a close, in a manner of speaking, some have said, as an email was sent to one of our correspondents here at the Punch on Tuesday night by the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit, entitled Designation of Individuals and Entities for March 18, 2024. And this disclosed the full names and identities of 15 entities, including 9 individuals and 6 bureau de change firms that have been sanctioned over terrorism financing. The document revealed that the Nigerian Sanctions Committee met on March 18, 2024, where specific individuals and entities were recommended for sanction following their involvement in terrorism financing. Now, the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation, with the approval of the President, has thereupon designated that the following individuals and entities be listed on the Nigeria sanctions list. The document read in part. Now, very quickly, I move to some of the names, if not all of the names, and I wouldn't be doing that without discussing it with gentlemen right here. So I know that, for example, let me start with Mr. Obadari. This was still a conversation we had yesterday as to why would we be waiting to have the names published. Sometimes earlier yesterday, we had just one name, and by the time, it was late afternoon, we had all the 15 names come out. Then we dated it back to 2021, when the United Arab Emirates literally said to us, oh, we have over 400 people list here of people who we know are sponsoring terrorism or whatnot in Nigeria. And so came we are going to publish their names, we are not going to publish the names. You know, Femi Adesina said, no, that is not what we are going to do. And then Malami at that time also said we would respect the rule of law and whatnot and the constitution and protect the rights of Nigerians and whatnot. But people are saying the problem of insecurity is big enough that we shouldn't cover anyone who may be connected to this. Finally, we have 15 names. Mr. Obadare, and you know, the apparent reason I'm coming to you first is that we had this conversation just yesterday. On these 15 names, 9 of them are individuals and the rest of them are Bureau de Change operators. What do you make of having released these names to the public? Do you say it's a win?
I think it's a step in the right direction. It gives an impression that Nigeria is ready to start fighting Islamic terrorism. It's actually embarrassing a few years ago when the UAE gave Nigeria the ammunition to start the fight against the financiers of terrorism. But Buhari and his Attorney General, then Malami, they were not ready to go ahead. I think even Femi Falana, SAN, even said he will go to court to compel Malami to start trying those people. But at the end of the day, the government went away and nothing was done. So this gives you an understanding that maybe Tinubu wants to start fighting the financial, because in terror you have to deal with the finance. The sources of financing are key. If you don't have the money, the funds, they will not be able to prosecute their terror war against Nigeria.
Now, interesting, Mr. Kasike, I mean, there is a lot to say about this. In checking some of the details of some of the names already published, I found that there was a woman who was said to be the lead of the terrorist organization based in the north central Nigeria, and according to the reports, that she's based in Okene, and what she does is go about to widows of slain terrorists who have died in the line of duty, you would say, and then settles them and does all of these things. And there are also other people as well who are connected in some form or the others to this. You look at that alongside what Mr. Badare just said and where we came from. And I do not want us to take it away from talking the Buhari-led administration. That was a whole 8 years of where we're coming from. And in that period, terrorism became a big deal again, when at first we thought, oh, we're making progress. And finally, it became clear that we weren't. Do you particularly feel that Buhari was right not to have published the names? Or do you think he had a reason indeed, maybe to protect the nation at large? Who knows?
Let me respond by saying the Buhari government was actually not in touch with the people. He was not interested in giving the people what they want. As far as terrorism is concerned, the Buhari government did his worst. He didn't help Nigeria. He didn't. He never. That administration never helped Nigeria. He wasn't in touch. Everything about terrorism was shrouded in secrecy. If you look at this terrorism issue, in South Africa, about 6 persons have been jailed because of this terrorism issue.
Linked to terrorism.
Linked to Nigeria. And here, Buhari's government handled it with kid's glove. People were being killed. People were being slaughtered. And for many, as an editor, I've been, working on this issue. See, we've been calling, when will they publish these names? For the past 1.5 years. When will they publish these names? When will they publish these names? Surprisingly, I commend the Tinubu's administration for thinking it well that this thing should be published.
Mr. Kasike, but this is not all the names.
Definitely, it can never be all the names. I told you that six persons have already been jailed
in South Africa in connection to terrorism in Nigeria.
Yes.
And nobody is yet jailed in Nigeria
in
connection to terrorism in Nigeria. What do you, let me take this a bit further. Do you see these literally becoming a litigation, or is it ending just in the publication of the names? So now you guys have the names, do what you will, and we'll rest our case.
You know, Nigeria is a country where you see this thing they call 1 week, one trouble. By next week, another thing will happen and we'll forget this. Ordinarily, this issue should be pursued to the end, where Nigerians will now say, yes, we have got these terrorists. But no, by next week, in fact, in 2 weeks' time, you will see that nobody will talk about this again. You will see that it will be the media that will be calling government people that, how far have you gone? And they will not respond. That is the situation Nigerians find themselves.
Well, interestingly, we want some results, whether you like it or not. We're not just ecstatic about, oh, we have names. It's not to name and shame, as against what Femi Additional was saying. We're not going to name and no. The purpose of this is not naming and shaming anyone. The purpose of this is to literally name and let us prosecute to a reasonable end, to the degree to which insecurity issues in the country can come to become a thing of the past. Mr. Obadari, do you say, or what do you particularly say, or what do you expect, let me say, from the government, having published this name? What next steps do you expect the government to do?
The next logical step is for government to release more information about the individuals and the companies, the BDCs involved. See, there was enough information about Mamu because he was already in the public space.
Yes.
But the others, the information on them is very scanty. So the first step is to, because you don't want to do business, you don't want to go to the airport, for example, you want to travel, and you are going to buy your Forex from a company linked to terrorism. Because you can, so the first thing now is for government to release more information so that people will be aware of who they are. There are many bureaux in Nigeria. So we need to know who we are dealing with. We need to tag the names with what they have done and what they are doing. So we don't want, even foreign entities, international companies, you don't want them to transact business with BDCs that are funding terrorism. So we need more information. Then from there you proceed to prosecution. And if the laws are not strong enough, then if they are not robust enough, thank you for that word. If they are not robust enough, then you have to quickly work up new laws to take care of what is happening.
Thank you so much. Now, before we leave this story, I want us to quickly look on this. So, in the document that we have at the Punch, there is the a revelation that in accordance with the Section 54 of the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act of 2022, institutions and individuals are required to immediately identify, which also speaks to what you just spoke on. You don't want to be traveling and be buying from a Bureau Change who's already linked to this. Identify and freeze without prior notice all funds, assets, and any other economic resources belonging to the designated persons and entities in your possession and report same to the Sanctions Committee. Report to the Sanctions Committee any assets frozen or actions taken in compliance with the prohibition requirements. Immediately file a suspicious transaction report to the NFIU for further analysis of the financial activities of such an individual or entity, and report as a suspicious transaction report to the NFIU all cases of name matching in financial transactions prior to or after receipt of this list. This then goes on to say everybody has to be on the watch and look out if you're transacting businesses and whatnot, to ensure that the names that are already on this list are actually, clear of your business transactions, lest you become culpable in a way or the other. So now, very quickly, arrests and resignation. the Nigerian Labour Congress and Labour Party clash. I think this is a rather interesting development. So the Labour Party on Wednesday condemned the invasion of its party secretariat by the leadership of the Nigeria Labour Congress, led by Joe Ajero. The National Publicity Secretary of the Labour Party, Abayomi Arabambi, called for Ajero's arrest for treason for allegedly planning a political insurrection against the federal government through conduct likely to cause a breach of peace, with his call on students, market women and leaders, thugs and other miscreants to invade the 36 state chapters of Labour Party offices, as these can lead to breakdown of law and order. Now, you would recall that the Nigerian Labour Congress had earlier stormed the National Secretariat of the Labour Party in Abuja to protest the party's national convention planned for the end of this month. The Congress also demanded that the sacking of the national chairman of the party, Julius Abure, be immediately carried out. The NLC leadership accused Abure of planning to hold a secret convention without the inputs of major stakeholders. So this goes back and forth. And one thing I seem to appreciate in this is somewhat the instant, I would say, response of the Labour Party to the move by the Nigerian Labour Congress, to occupy their secretariat yesterday, even though it wasn't quite successful, as they were prevented, from gaining entrance. But I want to quickly understand this matter a little more. And I'll begin with you, Mr. Kasike. So, I mean, indeed, some would argue, the Labour Congress, right, and the Labour Party, while we understand what the nexus is, but really, were there no other way to have, sought to seek audience and more understanding on the issue at hand?
I think the NLC president, Ajero, does not know that he has a lot of job on his hands. And this one is like leaving the elephant and pursuing the ant. And that will not give you anything. We have the issue of minimum wage that he should be looking at, and not politics. Because what he has just done is to give the impression that he is not a man to be relied on. He has a job at hand to ensure that workers get well paid, considering the economic realities in the country. But leaving that to go search for one thing or the other, or look for, claim ownership of the labor
of the Labour Party
is unfortunate and is unacceptable. He should face his job, and this one is not his job. Workers own Labour Party and not NLC. When we say workers are under TUC, NLC, NUPENG, Pengasam. There are many of them. So why will Ajero take it upon himself to now start storming secretariats, state secretariats across the country? That is not good. And I think he should be cautioned on that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Kasike. So, Mr. Wadare, what's your take on the occupation of the secretariats of the Labour Party by the Nigerian Labour Congress, and indeed also calling what Joe Ajero has done treason by the Labour Party?
In Nigerian politics, things don't appear normal. There are some underpinnings before an event will take place. But the little understanding that we have now is that the NLC is enmeshed in party politics. Ordinarily, that should not be. There is a brief that the NLC has, and which my colleague has talked about. The brief is mainly about workers' interest. It's not about party politics. That's totally out of sync with the Labour Party. Is just Labour Party, maybe by name. A former president of the NLC, Adams Oshiomhole, he did not contest under Labour Party. So you cannot say the NLC is the real owner of the Labour Party. So the NLC should be concerned about the interest of Nigerian workers. not the real politics of the Labour Party. And that's what it's doing. And it's going to end up in a bad way if it continues like that. Let the politicians play their politics, and the NLC take more interest in the interest of workers.
And the welfare of workers. And speaking of welfare of workers, very quickly before we move to the very last story. Now, the occupation of the the Labour Party is one thing. The occupation of streets across the country has been a move by the Nigerian Labour Congress in the past few months. And I would say it somewhat has successfully become somewhat unsuccessful. In situations where they call for protests and whatnot, and people do not even come out to the degree you would expect that people would come out to support the Labour Party, the Nigerian Labour NLC. Let me just call NLC because the Labour is confusing. The NLC call for protests. Now, in all of these, do you say, let's quickly look at Joe Ajaro's NLC. Do you say that Joe Ajero is getting it right with the call for protests that end up not becoming successful by virtue of what we see on the street, and then the recalling of the protests in just barely some hours after the call for, say, a week warning protest, 2 weeks occupation of this and that? What do you make of his call for protests?
It might be a little bit harsh, but I think the Labour Party, the NLC, forgive me, the NLC is losing momentum. Unlike the past, when you have Pai Modu, even Oshe Omole, I mean, Labour had a reputation. When Labour was fighting for a cause in those days, you will know that Nigerians will rally around. But I think things started changing a while ago when Labour, especially during the 2012 petrol protest, anti-subsidy protest. Nigerians believe, rightly or wrongly, that when Labour enters the same room with the government, Labour comes out and starts talking with both sides of the mouth. And so since that time, Labour had been losing steam, had been losing momentum. These days, Nigerians actually believe that Labour cannot carry them to that promised land. That we fight for them, fight for their interests, and stick to a cause. So these days, when Labour calls for a protest or to march, or Nigerians, they prefer to sit on the edge
and look on. So, Mr. Kasike, very quickly, please quickly respond to how or what you make of Joe Ajaro's NLC.
Joe Ajero has shown himself as somebody that should not be taken seriously, because each time he talks stuff, the moment he goes to meet government behind closed doors, when he comes out, you see that his gait and carriage will change to someone who is who has forgotten the task ahead, and you look as if he has seen something that will make him happy and throw away the interests of
by something
workers.
That will make
and
him
he's
happy.
losing.
What do you speak of particularly?
I believe when he's happy to meet with the president, and even Shomole said it the other time that this crop of labor leaders don't know the right thing to do. Look at the issue of this what we like a wage increase. Yes. You will see that they will not even get it right. They will only make the noise, but when it comes to action, Joe Ajero will not get it right, because somehow he has the interests of government, not even the workers at heart. Because anytime they meet, see him coming out, you look like somebody that is jogging out with excitement. You see him with excitement. He cannot carry out a single protest without, recalling the protest again.
I have not, I'm yet to witness any
before we move on, I think Joe Ajero needs a reality check. We all agree that there is hardship everywhere, but to go and demand a minimum salary of 1 million naira a month, I think that you need a reality check. Where will you get that kind of 1 million naira a month as the minimum wage? No matter how the naira has
Mr. Obadari, but maybe not so much of a reality check. Just today, or was it yesterday, news of the president making a case for the increment of the salaries.
That's not minimum wage.
But that is not minimum. That increment also went upwards of 860 something percentage.
No, that's not minimum wage.
That may not be minimum wage, but equally sometimes, somehow. I look at this as though this is about the whole divide between the lack of nexus between the earnings up there and the earnings of the masses. How do we then realistically connect all this?
In every society, that difference will always be there.
But can it be as realistic?
In New York, for example, the minimum wage per hour is $15. Right. But in the same place, you find people earning maybe $100 per hour, even earning $200. So that one is not. See, the minimum wage is there so that you'll be able to afford the basic things of life. But when you ask for 1 million naira as the minimum, as the most,
it very much looks like you're not ready even to talk. But if we can come to a consensus just before we move to the last topic, story here, what would you realistically pitch as a workable minimum wage at a time as this?
My own concern is not really about the minimum wage. My own concern is what can your wage buy?
What is the power? What is the power
wage of the wage
in the market?
Yes. Well, that is
Mr. Kasika, is it the same for you? Or would you pitch it at, say, 250,000 naira?
They should stop the free fall of the naira.
Okay.
If you stop the free fall of the naira, then you fix the minimum wage so that what I earn will not continue to diminish. If what I earn today and if the strength of what I earn today diminishes, then the aim of setting the minimum wage is defeated.
Yes.
So that is it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And that brings us to the concluding story today. So, jail for student loan defaulters as National Assembly passed bill. Contrary to the initial position of suspension of the student loan, the National Assembly on Wednesday passed the Student Loans Access to Higher Education Act Repeal and Reenactment Bill 2024. This comes after separate considerations by both the Senate and the House of Representatives of the report of the Committee on Tertiary Institutions and TET Fund. President Bola Tinubu, in a letter written to the Senate last Thursday, sought the repeal of the existing law and submitted a fresh bill to be passed into law. The student loan scheme was scheduled to take off last Thursday, but the presidency decided to make some amendments to the bill before implementation, which the Senate gave expeditious consideration in plenary. Now, the amendments sought to the Act, according to an explanatory memorandum made available to reporters, include the removal of the family income threshold as a condition for applying for the student loan. It also removed the guarantor requirements so that students can apply for and receive loans subject to application and identity verification guidelines as provided by the fund. Besides, applicants can no longer be disqualified based on their parents' loan history. It established a justice and fairness provision mandating the board to ensure a minimum national spread of loans approved and disbursed in each financial year. On repayment of loan, and I think this is about the bigger part of the conversation, the bill indicated that the payment or repayment shall begin as soon as the beneficiary becomes employed in any capacity. However, it pointed out that any person who provides a false statement to the fund under this section is guilty of a felony and is liable to imprisonment for 3 years. This has been rated and debated. I mean, for the past few months, this has become a huge talking point, and I couldn't just drop this story. Normally, I should just do the 3 stories and go, but I feel it's a lot of good news. Also, it is a lot of a few talking points here and there. First, what do you make of the fact that we have new introductions to this bill, which in my opinion are really great, right? I do not have to pay for the loan weights of my parents if I really do need to acquire loan for my education. But for starters, Mr. Obadari, let me start with you again. What do you make of the regime of student loans in Nigeria?
Loans are usually problematic in Nigeria. I don't know why. Look at the Anchor Borrowers Program. The CBN is chasing the beneficiaries to repay what some of them will claim the crops failed, insecurity,
Floods,
climate change,
so many loans are like that in Nigeria. Mostly, look at the AMCON 5 trillion naira loan to rescue the banks in those days and some companies. So, and student loans in particular is uncharted waters for Nigeria. Other countries have been doing, the US is doing it, the UK is doing it, but in Nigeria, it's new. So it's like a learning curve for the country. Many of the provisions that were recently reintroduced they're actually okay, because the other one bad students, maybe the income of your parents was at a threshold and you are not qualified. But now I think access is better with the new
introductions
bills
to the
that are passed. But
you're still somewhat uncomfortable, I think,
is the repayment
with the entire introduction of the student loan regime in Nigeria. Mr. Kaseke, what do you make of student loan?
I believe that the student loan the scheme is a welcome development. But I have my fear that this should have come later, not now, because we are still battling the issue of unemployment. If you say, okay, if you get the loan, when you get employed, you start paying. We have seen graduates who who stay with that job for 7 years, for 8 years.
So there's a provision that you can actually keep notifying and informing or whatnot. You can file for your unemployment status and with proof, right? In which case, if you are fraudulent, then 3 years jail.
At the end of the day, I have an uncle that never got a job since 1987 when he graduated. At the end of the day, he ended up, managing one keke. So from that keke, you think he will be happy enough to pay back the loan? But he still sees himself as an unemployed person.
So do we now need to redefine the term unemployment in the regard if a loan is granted, it is expected?
No, what I'm saying is that federal government, state government, local government should take seriously the issue of unemployment in the country. Because this loan issue will fail if there is still the issue of serious unemployment. The rate of unemployment in Nigeria is alarming. So when you bring this one, it's like putting the cart before the horse. So it may fail.
In essence, do you see a situation where so many people who are then unable to pay are actually now, behind the bars, in which case also key in this provision is the felony charge that can land you in prison for 3 years. I do not want to play down this part of the entire provision, and it's for a reason.
I think we should take seriously what
Mr. Kaseke was saying.
I said. It's about graduating, and if you graduate and you are employed after youth service, it's reasonable that you will want to pay back the loans. But when you are still busy, you don't know where the next employment or even any employment will come from, it's doubly difficult to tie somebody down to
loan repayment.
And I think I like what Nance has suggested, that it should be 5 years to start with after youth service.
Okay.
To start repayment.
Oh,
That
no.
there should be a moratorium of 5 years. I think that is reasonable enough.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. So much we can still say about these whole scheme, the National Student Loan Scheme. But indeed, we would leave that for future conversations. It's been a pretty interesting talking moment with Mr. Obafemi Obadare. Mr. Obafemi Obadare is the chairman, editorial board, Punch Nigeria Limited, and Mr. Akasike Chukudi, and I won't forget your name, Chukudi. Mr. Chukudi Akasike is an editor here at the Punch. You edit.
I'm the news editor.
The news editor.
Weekend titles.
Weekend titles. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Melanie Ishola. That much we can take on the roundtable today. Do well to join us next week, Thursday, same time. Goodbye.